All right. First of all, I know clearly that it's noonish, and I know clearly you want to take some foreman money with you. And so you're going to eat at least one or two meals here in a second. And so I'm the thing that's going to make you suck it up and pay the price for being here because you got to wait until I'm done. In case you didn't know, I can barely introduce myself in a half hour. So let's see how this goes, okay? Here's what I really want us to think about. Again, if you dovetail off of what we heard here this morning, folks who are trying to help us look at different angles to be successful in the beef business. Now, I know, or I suspect, that there might be some of you in here that have a little more seasoning than I do, maybe have a few more years, even though I'm getting reasonably old, my old self. And so some of the folks who might have grayer hair than me might say, you know what, that's all good. It's all great. But there's just a lot of smoke and mirrors nonsense. And frankly, I'm going to eat the food. I'm going to thank the foremans, and I'm going to leave. Because you might question the ability of some of these things to be implementable in your program. And so, before you go to sleep for the next 30 minutes, 45, whatever, Rob, before you go to sleep, I would just encourage you to ponder this. Even if you're one of those folks who will look at some of the tools that we talk about and go, yeah, whatever. I bet at the same time you know that your son or your daughter or your grandkids whom you want to run your business a generation from now, you know they can't do it the same way you've done it and stay in business. Life's changing. So even if some of this is just a bit too much, our goal here today is to help you position your operation so that as we go through this rapid change, you don't put yourself in a corner. That's not what we want to do. I don't know if this thing functions or not. We need to give ourselves options and ways forward. And that can be in a whole host of ways. There's just a few. We got to have options. I like a game. Games are fun. I don't like games in my business. Okay? If you want to play games, and it's okay to play games. I was at an event yesterday. Fortunately, in this particular environment, we're serious. Okay? We have folks who are, again, to steal the thing I said before, in the beef business. I was in an event yesterday where we had a bunch of folks who dressed up for the day. They had a lot of hats that clearly they didn't wear on a regular basis. Their boots hadn't seen cow crap probably ever. And boy, oh boy, were they sporting. They were posing. And I flat challenged them. Are you here to be part of the beef business, or do you want to be part of a 4-H club? Nothing wrong with a 4-H club. Perfectly good thing. It's a fine thing. Doesn't have a damn thing to do with the beef business, but you can do it. And so we're here to talk about the business side of making you, and probably more importantly for some of you, the generations to come, relevant for a long time. There's enough chance in our business we don't need more. They might have mentioned, and some of you know, that I work for a breed association. I work for the American Seminole Association. Now, your natural inclination, and it's a healthy inclination, when you hear somebody works for a breed association, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm done with you because you're a charlatan. Okay? That should be your initial reaction to most breed association folks. And if you don't have that gut reaction, you haven't talked to enough. I happen to be a little bit blessed because, as Rob mentioned, I do get to work for an organization and follow in one of my many mentors, and another mentor who's happens to be in the room, and we'll talk a little bit later. I get to follow in their footsteps of working for what I would argue is the only breed association in this country who doesn't act like a breed association. So, a number of years ago, American Seminole Association started this thing called International Genetic Solutions, and that's important for some of the things we're going to talk about. What is IGS? The long and the short of it, it's a collaboration of a whole bunch of folks who do their data together. Why? Why does that matter? It matters because something that you know, and maybe more important, Grandpa used to know, and we have forgotten it. The last 20 years, we've been sold a bill of goods that you can straight breed cattle, and that works. The data says unequivocally, if you want cows that don't last as long, if you want calves that are less healthy, if you want to have to use more drugs so you have more aggravation from our folks at Zoetis, good. Straight breed the hell out of them. It'd be great. Otherwise, use heterosis to your advantage. Breed complementarity and heterosis works. And all of these breed associations embrace that. We get genetic tools out of that, and that's going to be relevant here in a minute. The largest beefy cow on the planet by a lot. It's essentially the genetics arm of ASA. And again, does multi-breed genetic predictions. Why does that matter to you? This is the reality of the world we live in. So much of what we are talking about is big data, right? Big data. We don't like that term. When somebody puts big in the front of anything outside of, I did just check on the score of my team's football game, and so we could have some big offensive linemen, and it would be nice because apparently we don't. Outside of that, big in front of anything almost scares us to death. But that's what we are. We're big data. And our job is to take a lot of data and make tools out of it that you can use. And so, not just hundreds of data points, not just millions, but literally billions of data points to try to give you genetic predictions. And you can say, well, genetic predictions, why does that matter to me? Because there's only so many things that you can impact in your operation to give you options. One is your genetics. Certainly one of the reasons you're here at Trinity. Good, valuable EPDs and indexes. The IGS feeder profit calculator, and that's predominantly what I was asked to talk on, not just to preach at. But now last year, for those of you who are here, you know we talked fairly extensively on the profit calculator. I went through the minutia of it just a little bit. I'm not going to go that deep into it this year. And here's why. It works. Use it or don't. Okay? You decide. If you want to be able to show the profit potential of your calves, and you want something that costs you nothing, it takes about 20 minutes of your life, and you want to be able to go to your friends at the sale barn so they have different tools to help market your calves better. If you market other places, if you market with Rocky or some of his team, use it or don't. But don't cry when there are tools out there and you don't want to take 20 minutes to figure them out. You should also know IGS is unique because we are open to any and all breed types. I will come back to the profit calculator breed. We're open to any and all breed types. Year over year, 20% growth in different breed types. It's good for us. Good for all of us. Interestingly enough, and something I'm not going to talk too much about today, this bottom line is interesting. Some of you in this room are probably better data collectors than most seed stock producers. Foremans would be an exception. But I know that there are a number of commercial folks in this room. Some of you I've actually done some work with already in the past after last year. Some of you are better data collectors than most of the folks who purport to be selling you bulls with knowledge, because you all do a tremendous job of tracking data. So much so that we're in a world where serious commercial folks can get EPDs and indexes to make decisions for their females for, frankly, Rob, a fraction of what you pay. I mean, a fraction. Why? Because we can give you tools for the maternal side that you don't have. I don't know about you, but for the most part, if it comes to selecting a replacement heifer, what tools do you have? No. My eyeballs. Hell, you saw I got to use my readers, so can you really trust my eyeballs? How good a cow she came out of? How do you know? How did you determine she's a good cow? She lasted a long time. Well, do you have to feed her more than the other ones? You don't. I mean, we have little tools, but we can provide you the same maternal tools that they use here. So we have a lot of commercial folks doing that. That's not the point of this talk, but I bring it up. And just in case you want to know how many, year-over-year growth, over 130% growth year over year in providing EPDs to commercial customers. How do we do all this stuff? It's really pretty simple. We can get into a bunch of fancy things, and we can bear ourselves down in that, or we can just say that. What's that mean? If you were watching, pick your noisy news outlet of choice, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. If you were watching that today, given the dynamics of the world we've lived in as of late, they would tell you this phrase is maybe a terrible phrase. They would say it means something like, I don't know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing. But the reality is, this is the basis for everything we do. It's the basis for capitalism. Quid pro quo means simply this: something for something. So for all those folks that you've heard bastardize that term 6 ways from Sunday, it doesn't mean exactly what they think it means. This is what we all do. And so why are you here? You're here because this organization has proven to you they're invested in your business. And they're trying to give back. And so you invested a day to come listen to a mouthy, bald-headed guy from Missouri talk at you. Okay? Something for something. So, again, before we talk in some of the specifics, I want to earn a little bit of cred with you if I can. So, if our job, if our core fundamental position at IGS is to develop genetic tools that you can use either directly on your place through potential EPDs or the feeder profit calculator, or indirectly through buying quality bulls and quality seed stock from folks who use these approaches, I need to at least give you a little hint at what the approach looks like without going into a bunch of mathematical formulas that none of us wants to look at. So I'm just going to make it real simple, and I'm going to look at the end result. This is the trends of a very prominent breed association, that is not an IGS partner. It's not one of the breeds that we work with. And I boiled down their metrics to probably 2 pretty simple things. One is the primary terminal index this organization has, highlighted in blue. The other, the orange line, is the primary maternal metric that this organization uses, highlighted, again, in orange. The IGS approach is, let's use sound, credible science so we can make productive decisions, not just short-term, exciting revenue-based decisions, but long-term profit-based decisions, right? Revenue and profit, obviously they were related, but they're not the same thing. You all know, enough of you do crops, you realize I can have a lot of bushels, and I don't always make money. Sometimes the person down the road who doesn't get to brag at the coffee shop actually makes a lot more money than I do. Okay? Let's talk profit, not just revenue. You can see, I think, this is a window of 20 years. In the last 20 years, this particular breed association has done this to itself because I would argue has used questionable scientific tact. So what would this suggest? This breed used to be fairly similar, fairly kind of what you would call a balanced, maybe dual-purpose approach. Now is clearly a terminal breed. Does that make sense? They are clearly not a maternal breed, or at least struggling in spots. This is an IGS approach with one of the IGS breeds. You can see over that exact same window of time how those things run together. Credible science pays dividends to you even if you don't have to look at the science. Here is a specific trend chart for the American Seminole since '97. There's a whole bunch of different traits kind of adjusted down to a common base so you can put them on one graph to look at them. But the long and the short of it is, I can tell you, because I've looked, not a single breed association, not a single breed of cattle in the United States has done in the last 20 years what you see on this slide right here. What does this mean? Going to our conversation from a little bit earlier. Let's just be honest. 25 years ago, how many of you used Seminoles 25 years ago? Some of you did. How many are like, what the hell? How big can a calf get? Right? How big can they get at birth? And so, yeah, we don't even want to talk about the actual numbers. That was a rhetorical question. We don't really want the answer, okay? Look what serious self-evaluation and serious science did. In 25 years, again, this guy gives the tip of the cap to some of my mentors. Some of you might be familiar with things like Focus 2000. Some of you know that terminology, where it was a serious come to Jesus meeting for Seminole folks. One of us in the room was involved in a good portion of what caused this trend to do what it's done. But what do we have? Going up, cavities, just shooting through the roof, which would make sense, then the birth weight would be dropping, right? We get that. I know some of the colors might be a little hard. Yearling weight's going up, right along the same plane with weaning weight. They're both growth traits. They ought to go about the same, makes sense. Marbling, continuing to trend upward. Stayability. Cow longevity. Now we're talking profit, not just revenue, right? Cow longevity. Look at that number, or that line, excuse me. We need to do a bunch of things, and we need to do them once. So hopefully that can at least prove to you whether these things matter or not to you, that there's a little bit of credibility from an IGS standpoint, an IGS approach. So long and short of it, it's a data-driven industry. And some of this stuff is actually a little uncomfortable for some of us. It's uncomfortable for me. I won't lie. I actually sort of really am excited for the day we have a big solar flare and I can smash my phone with a hammer. I'm not even lying to you. But until that day, we have jobs to do. And so, is anybody familiar with this? Has some of us seen this? Okay. Walmart just announced that they're going to track every head of lettuce through blockchain. Blockchain, some of you probably would be much more adept at explaining what it is than I am. But the long and the short of it, it's kind of an online ledger that a bunch of us can put information in. Nobody can really change it. So it's kind of allows for a lot of transparency in various steps. It's how things like Bitcoin and stuff like that work. It's really coming into our business, coming into the crop business. Walmart decided they're going to track every head of lettuce. To be clear, this is a shot across the bow. If they want to track a head of lettuce, how long before they want to know what your calves are doing? This is a head of lettuce. I don't know. What's a head of lettuce weigh? A couple pounds? Can't be that hard to track a 1,000-pound animal if you can track a 2-pound head of lettuce. I don't know. Or that, speaking of traceability. Some of you may or may not be familiar, but across the country there are a handful of traceability efforts coming to bear. We are cattlemen and cattlewomen. There are a couple things we know. One of them was already stated up here earlier. We do not like authority. We don't. Do we have any Canadians in the room? So, and it's okay. I mean, it's just a question. I'm not going to call you out or anything. But a lot of our Canadian friends, they'll say, well, we were able to do all this up in Canada, right? You may know that they have a pretty thorough traceability approach in Canada. And they do. There's no incentive for it. They don't get paid for it. They're just forced to do it. But here's the thing. If you're a Canadian, when you were born as a Canadian, who do you ultimately answer to? You have authority. Actually, she's the Queen of England, if you really want to know, but that's a different deal, okay? They are bred into a system where they answer to somebody. We're Americans. We told that monarchy a long time ago, we're out. We don't like authority, but this is coming. So at the same time, let's not pretend this isn't real, because this is coming. Is it mandatory or voluntary? Ultimately, as Marty and Rocky and I were talking, if you think there's a big difference, you're wrong. Because the first time, pick your big entity, Walmart, Amazon, Cisco, the first one of those who thinks that there's enough source of traceable cattle that they can fill their supply needs, guaranteed, mark it down. When they are confident that they can fill their boxes by fully traceable cattle, they will say, that's our model. Bam, we're in. We only buy traceable stuff. And you know how long before this industry is de facto mandatory traceable? No time flat. So whether it's mandatory or voluntary, it is coming. Cattle Trace is a Kansas version of a pilot project. There's one going in Texas. There's some states that are fully traceable, Michigan, a couple others. You and I don't have to like this, but we need to be aware and we need to engage. Because traceability Adds marketing power for you. This is just shameless shilling. That's all this is. Some number of months ago, IGS announced a partnership on the feeder profit calculator with the world's largest third-party verifier. Some of you know that is IMI Global. They are the biggest by a lot. And they looked around for a partner that could provide genetic verification. They searched at all the tools out there and found that the tool that made the most sense for them and had the same basic philosophy and the same credibility was our feeder profit calculator. Or this, just a number of days ago, Tyson and Progressive Beef announced a relationship, mostly so they can get more data, track more cattle. Why do I bring all these things up? They're not scary things, they're just observations. If you are going to give yourself options and not back yourself into a corner, you need genetic options, health power, health knowledge, management knowledge, and chances are you're going to need a little traceability. Just is what it is. So, I don't like guessing if I don't have to. Let's talk quickly about the profit calculator. I'm going to put a bunch of things up here. I'm going to try to be quick, but I won't, but I'll try. What is the profit calculator? Long and the short of it, it's very simple. We're going to take known genetics. In this case, you're buying bulls from Trinity. We're going to take those known genetics. We're going to combine them with predictions from EPDs, which are extraordinarily scientifically sound. We're going to combine them with some basic management pieces, mostly BRD vaccinations. And are you owning those calves after you wean them, or are you shipping on diesel fuel? Okay, are you weaning on diesel fuel? That's what you're doing. So, we're going to do that. We're going to leverage our genetic power. And by the way, it doesn't cost you a penny. Now, I know, anytime somebody tells me something doesn't cost me something, I'm like, yep, thank you, I'm out. That's this whole charlatan breed association thing. It's just natural inclination. But I want you to know, there's actually a cost. It's a very significant cost. It's just serious seed stock folks are paying the bills, okay? You don't pay. Folks like the Foremans and others have invested in this so that you can get knowledge. Why? Because they're convinced. You get knowledge, you'll start seeking for more profit-focused cattle, and you'll find yourself to the most serious seed stock folks. Simple as that. And those folks who are in the seed stock business but not providing you profit possibilities, you'll probably shop with them less. Again, in an effort of time, let's put all these up there. So the way this thing works, should you want to do it, you provide a little information, and we make some break-even calculations. We're going to take into account your management. Again, if the calves are weaned 30 days or more, and they're doubly vaccinated for BRD, it is biologically clear from a scientific standpoint that what happens in those situations, if you wean them for more than 30 days and you doubly vac them, you put a great deal less risk on the buyer for mortality and illness. It's just clear, okay? And so we set an average relative to 60% calf, and we run that compared to years. You can see how we define the average relative genetic value, and then we combine them together to get the total relative value. This is the information that's needed. It's a whole bunch of information, but most of you have this information reasonably handy. In fact, I will tell you, it takes most folks about 20-ish minutes to put in their information. Probably the thing that'd be hardest for most folks to find is their reg numbers. They may not keep track of their reg numbers. You know what you do then? I would tell you to call Mike. He's probably not going to answer. Probably busy. He's chasing a cow, or he's probably whining and dining somebody. You know what he's doing. He's selling bulls. I'd tell you to call Rob, but then he's just going to say, call Chelsea. So how about you just cut through the noise and just call Chelsea and say, hey, I need my reg numbers. She's probably the one who can get them faster than anybody else anyway, right? So probably the hardest thing for us to get. You put all that information. If you want more knowledge, you can go to our website, International Genetic Solution. You can learn a lot more about it. Or, again, you come to Trinity's because you like customer service. And so this group has gone a step above and beyond. You can go to their website. You all know how to go, trinityfarms.com. Info. Yes, I knew it was something weird on the end. I couldn't quite remember what it was. Okay, trinityfarms.info. Or use Google and just type it in. It'll fix you, okay? go to the top, and I know you can't probably see the words maybe, but if I highlight them, there's a little link right there for a calf data portal. You can click right on this website, and you're going to visit here many times because you need to come and buy bulls and you need to shop for stuff, so you're going to be here anyway. So you go up there. All you got to do, because you're going to call Chelsea anyway, and you're going to get your reg numbers, you're going to also ask her, what's my password to get in here? And she's going to give it to you. Am I correct? Somebody's going to give that to them. If you're a bot, and what's going to happen is you're going to submit your information right there. You don't have to do anything else, and they'll take care of it. We'll get the information back to both you and to Trinity. They'll share it. There's also a portal, interestingly enough, for potential buyers. So, if you're somebody who's a potential buyer in the room, there's an avenue for you as well. So, a lot of customer service right there. That stuff will take you right to. We'll get you the certificate. Certificate looks something like this. A lot of information. I know that you can't read it, but I want to be transparent and show you what we do. On the upper left, Rob, this is you, correct? This is a set that they put in just a number of days ago. So up in the top is their contact information. If you want Rob's cell number, there it is. Or I don't know if it's Rob's, could be Chelsea's. I don't know who it is. In the middle block on the left tells you about the calves. Range in birth dates, how many calves, color, polled, were they in terms of weight ranges, what's the color pattern, all those things. It also tells you the breed composition. Why? Because there's some cattle feeders who really like to feed a certain type of calf. There are certain cattle feeders who specialize in feeding cattle with a bit more continental, some with a bit more British. It gives those folks some knowledge. Down below, that's treatment history of vaccinations, deworming. There's no implants in these, but if there were, they'd go right there. But the long and the short of it, the magic's over here on the right that I think you can see. And what this says at the end of the day is this. Wherever they were to sell these calves, whatever the market price is on a given day, whether they sold them on Superior, they sell them a Toppenish, wherever they sell them on a given day, whatever they would pay for the average calf on that given day, the break-even of this particular set is $9.03 a hundredweight more. That's real and significant numbers. Now, if you're a seller, what does this mean? That means you actually have a third-party verification of the profit potential of your calves. We're actually predicting in the background all of the, what we would call phenotypes. How many are going to grade? How many are going to, what are the yield grades? What's the average daily gain? All of those things. And why can we do that? All that genetic prowess that I mentioned earlier, that's what gives us the skill to predict these things and do it with a high degree of confidence. So, seller, this gives you something, it costs you no money, costs you 20, 30 minutes of your life. You share it with your seller. Maybe they can sing about it from the block. They can put it on television screens. They can share it with potential buyers. Okay? Your buyer's not going to pay you $9. Why would they? What that says is it takes $9 more and they'll break even. Why would they pay $9 more just to break even? They're not going to do that. But they might pay you $3. They might pay you $4, right? What we're trying to do is speak a common language. Because heretofore, what do? We got smoke and mirrors, and I'm trying to position myself, and somebody over here is trying to position. It's a song and dance that, frankly, pisses most of us off. Because you can't get the truth from anybody. What we're trying to do is speak a common language. So the buyer says, clearly, from a risk management perspective, I have a much safer bet here. Now, I'm not going to pay $9 because I'm not going to just break even again. But I might meet you part way, where the person who made better cattle and invested in that effort, I can reward them and I can win a little. And I will tell you, in the sale barns that use this, frankly, and I've mentioned this to Rocky before, typically I would think you ought to be about splitting the difference. A lot of times the seller actually makes out really, really good because the buyers are so hungry for knowledge of any sort, they will probably pay higher than what the numbers suggest they should. Does that make sense? That just shows you how hungry some of the buyers are. That may or may not be the case in your particular market, but it's clearly the case in many markets. Oh, also, to prove how impressive this is, if you came here next sale and buy an elite bull. Or maybe you were here a couple years ago and bought an elite bull. And I've ran some of the profit calculators for a number of you all, and a couple of them look like rock star-ish. Okay? And so we could have done that. You know what Rob could have done? He could have said, Chip, I've got a couple calves out of just the last generation of bulls. No, he didn't. What he did is he said, these are all the sires. There's about 34 of them. And he gave me all the maternal grandsires of all the cows. You don't have to do that if you're a commercial producer. You don't have to go that far. But he did. Why? Because some of these bulls, some of these cows are influenced by bulls from many, many years ago. What has happened over time? We select, we get better, right? So the bulls you're using now, darn well ought to be better than the bulls you were using 15 years ago. If they're not, what you been doing? But they showed me all of this. That's impressive because now we have thorough knowledge, and still at $9. In the profit calculator, I will tell you $9 is a pretty fancy number. So, gives you that third-party deal. It's no cost, little time. My question to you is this. If you're a producer in this room, and you're buying cattle with this kind of knowledge, and you don't take the time to do this kind of thing, I'm left to ask two simple questions, or make maybe two simple assumptions. One, you just don't care. And I'm going to assume in this audience that's not the case. Or, especially when I'm farther south, if I'm back in Missouri, some of my neighbors, they ought to be scared of what the results look like, okay? You all probably don't have that fear. I've run enough foreman cattle. I wouldn't be too scared at all. But some of my neighbors back in the 573 area code, they need to be scared on occasion. Told you we partnered with the IMI Global. So now we're going to switch gears from genetics really quick. And I'm not going to go very far down this road because I'm going to leave this to Rocky here in a minute. But I want to show you something. These are real numbers. Now, these are IMI-specific lots from the last number of months. These will differ a little bit from Rocky's numbers because Rocky's going to use numbers that kind of cover the entire Superior platform. But I'm getting to a fairly narrow group, again, through 2018 up to just a number of weeks ago. These are the premiums when we start to do verification. This does not even include the value of added genetic prowess. This is just knowledge through one platform, albeit a substantial platform. You can see IMI Global Calves, and yes, that is a fee service, so people do pay money to get this verification done. But you can see the kind of dollars it is adding to those cattle. This is not hypothetical. This isn't pretend. These are real numbers on significant numbers of cattle. The Superior platform isn't for anybody. I'm not for everybody. I'm not suggesting that. But it is for some folks. But just as importantly, your local marketers, what's their job? Their job is to bring credible buyers in the space. That's their role. That's their job. And they're good at it. What's your job? Give them every ounce of knowledge you've got. Because until you all do that, there's certain buyers that aren't going to come in the room. There's certain buyers who say, I want this kind of awareness. Maybe not this specifically, but I want added awareness. And it's going to be hard for them to bring those folks to the table if we don't give a little on our side. We got to share a little bit of knowledge. Again, more just shameless shilling. So, quickly, I'll tell you, if you don't know who IMI is, I'm not going to talk very long, but you should know who they are because, again, it's at least something some of you should consider so you can read. Again, the long and the short of it, IMI is a subsidiary of a company called Where Food Comes From. It is the oldest and most significant firm in this space, again, by a lot. Where did they get their start? They've been in existence since the 90s. Where they really cut their teeth? Remember our Christmas gift in 2003? Remember the Christmas cow? BSC? Yeah. That's when they cut their teeth. Because what they found in the many months after that is there were still folks who were willing to pay a premium. There were people then that were willing to pay a serious premium for traceable cattle. That's when they really kicked off and have really not looked back since then. Okay? These are some of the programs they can do. Source and Age, NHTC. Again, that's one that probably many of you are somewhat familiar with. In an interest of time, I'm not going to go through each one of these individually. Verified natural, gap. Again, if you want more about these, I'll let Rocky talk to you about these things. He's far more adept at having these conversations than I am, okay? So, you got to find the right kind of people to play ball with. Folks who are progressive-minded. You get the right kind of genetics, the right kind of marketing, the right kind of tools. It's a beautiful place. I don't even know where it's at, but it's beautiful. So, I leave it with this. Way too often, we lament that I don't have options. I don't have ways forward. Ladies and gentlemen, the last 10 years have been wicked crazy. The next 5 are going to make that look like a pup. And I know it's easy for some mouthy, bald-headed guy from the Midwest to say that's true. It's not me. Okay? I showed you enough things that are coming to pass. These things are reality now. You wanted price differentiation from the time I was little, from the time I was Rocky's age. We've been saying, we want price differentiation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's here. It is here. Now, you may not be capitalizing on it right now. You may not be doing things. You may say, Chip, I'm just not going to wean my calves. Okay. Then they're not going to pay you for them. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. You may say, well, Chip, my 12 calves a year ought to bring just as much as his because he sells 200. No, it's just not going to happen. Wake up. It doesn't work like that. But if you want leverage, whether it's through genetic prowess here at Trinity or tools that give a little more awareness of the history of a calf, those tools are there, and people are paying for them. If the current folks that you're using don't pay for them, find somebody else. Or give the folks you're currently working with the knowledge to encourage other folks to come to the table for them. These tools are here. And especially those folks who are younger in the room, this is going to be the water they're going to swim in for their entire career. So we need to start prepping them now for this kind of knowledge. So again, my only question is, if you want leverage, do something. Do something. The thing you should do right now is eat. So if you have questions, you can throw them at me. Otherwise, I'll just be quiet unless the bosses have something to say. You want to come tell them about lunch? Or they know how to eat. They're pretty big kids. Okay. Thank you all. If you have questions, come talk to me. Appreciate it.